Hello, my soccer universe, to a review of the first leg of the Champions League semifinals this season. What a wonderful set of first legs. Yes, the first one between Arsenal and PSG was a really good match, but it was nothing that would enter the history books, I would argue. It was just PSG being better at what both of these teams want to do and got overall deserved win, although Arsenal had their chances to at least get a draw out of that one. They actually won the XG battle, curiously enough. But what happened on Wednesday evening just topped everything that I've ever seen in a first leg of a Champions League semi-final. What an absolutely incredible edge of your seat match. I mean, so many chances on both sides. This ended only 3-3. This could have been 6-6 if you like. Wonderful stuff to watch. Not if you're a coach, for sure, or if you like defensive football, which I'm not against, but boy, really great stuff. This beat many of those matches, and I even include the Man City Real Madrid 4-3 that had, I think, more goals or something like that. But this match felt much better because it was so open. Lamine Yamal just... Until Inter had figured him out, he was just unstoppable. Absolutely unstoppable. But I also have to give it to Inter. They really played hard and, yeah, earned their draw. With some luck, they even could have gotten out with a win there, which I think would have been probably a little bit too much as well. But before we go into these games, I want to just mention one little downer. Let me say, I'm so happy that the return legs are played at the Parc des Princes and the San Siro. Two stadiums where the crowds will actually make a great tifo display. I mean, what was shown at the Emirates was just abhorrently bad. I mean, just a big cannon being put down and then everyone waving. It seemed so fabricated and sterile. And while what was shown at Montjuic was better, it was also fabricated and sterile. It looked awful. I mean, same. So please, ultras by PSG, ultras by Inter, show us. I know the Inter ultras are half in jail at the moment, so I'm not sure how much there will be shown. But please show us how it's done. Because that was just not worthy of a Champions League semi-final. Absolutely poor stuff. And again, Barcelona slightly better, but they have been doing certain things like that over and over again, and this is made by the club. It lacks the life. That was the only downer. Everything else was great. So let's recap these two games, and yes, I spent a whole lot more time on the second game. Well, Arsenal could rely on the raucous crowd. PSG really set out to silence them very quickly, and a little bit more than 3 minutes, Dembélé plays it out on the left to Kvaratskhelia, who is not really bothered by the Arsenal defense, plays it back to Dembélé, who one times it via the inside of the post, internet, 1-0 PSG, 4th minute, and for the next 20 to 25 minutes or so, PSG were very much on top, and the better team creating a few more chances, and with some luck, and I think even with some more dedicated finishing, not trying to look for the other man. This could have been a 2-0 lead and the tie could already have been put to rest. However, credit where credit is due, Arsenal fought themselves back into the game, had a pretty big chance by Martinelli with a great save by Donnarumma, who was also outstanding for PSG. And right after the half, there was another early downer for Arsenal, because Merino seemingly had headed it in for the equalizer. However, he was offside. I really wondered the set piece routine that they had by starting offside and then coming back. Aren't you inviting a little bit more offside than you need to? So yeah, that was another downer, as I said, for Arsenal, who had another big chance through Trossard that was also tipped away from the goal by Donnarumma. But the longer the game then went, the more PSG could settle it down, and then it was not, will Arsenal get the equalizer? It was more, can Arsenal avoid conceding a second goal? And Gonzalo Ramos, for instance, hit it with the tip of his foot onto the crossbar. That was the biggest chance, but there was another one in there as well. And again, if PSG played nicer, there could have been the second goal as well. So while the game still very much hangs in the balance, overall, I don't think it's beyond Arsenal to get a result in Paris. It seems very much advantage PSG, who were the more mature team on the night. Only these little wobbles in there towards the end of the first half, at the beginning of the second half. That's probably where you have to be a little bit worried if you're a PSG fan. What a game on the Montjuic in Barcelona last night. A symphony, a spectacle. It was everything that you would want from a football match. Gripping from the beginning to the end. It was do not get distracted stuff. And yes, I was twice distracted. And guess what? I missed 2 goals live. I put my phone down then because I had to watch this game. This was really edge of your seat stuff, and I don't even have a real favorite in this one. Absolute stunning stuff. Absolutely stunning stuff. And I really love the contrasting style. You had the sheer brilliance of the Barca players with their incredible high line and pressing and counter pressing against a Inter team that is rock solid on the back and can play it out from the back, but don't have enough speed to really hurt Barca as well. Barca defensively a shambles, but so was Inter at some time. Curiously so. It was really gripping. But it also, and I will get into the game in a sec, I just have to get this out. It also leaves me wondering if either of these teams make it to the final. I don't think they will be the favorites because there are too many frailties in there despite their individual brilliance there. It started out early after I think a little bit more than 30 seconds. An Inter attack, and Inter were on the front foot from the get-go. It was Denzel Dumfries who plays it into Thuram, then backheels it into the net. An absolute stunner of an opener. And then Barcelona immediately on the front foot again, having chances. Potential penalty, Bastoni on Yamal, although I personally thought this was alright. But the Barca put a lot of pressure on Inter, and Inter had a really hard time figuring it out. How do we actually keep Barcelona at bay? Maybe they were even sitting too deep. They were not really attacking. They knew if we triple team Yamal, he's still gonna go past us, and I think Di Marco will have nightmares of Yamal and probably should retire after this game because he was not in there. And Di Marco only played because of the offensive output that he can give, but defensively an absolute disaster. However, it didn't matter much because after a corner kick, Denzel Dumfries scissor kicks it into the net. Was it a high boot? I thought so. I mean, Pedri is standing right there. In any case, it was another spectacular goal for Inter. 21 minutes in, Inter lead 2-0. It was rub your eye stuff if you're an Inter fan. However, to their credit, Barcelona respond immediately and Lamine Yamal makes a run through 5 Inter defenders. And yes, he has individual brilliance, but I also think, cannot anyone close him down a little bit more and give him a little bit more counter? They were more or less accompanying into the box. On the other side, his finish, it was brilliant. And then a few minutes later, he almost made it 2-2 by just hitting the woodwork. Again, a brilliant run across the touchline in from a very acute angle. Barca then get the equalizer. Another one where I thought the Inter defense did not look good. It was a wonderful ball by Pedri that is then headed on by Rafinha into the path of Ferran Torres, and it's 2-2 in the 38th minute. And I just cannot help but think, yes, it was nicely drawn up, but the defenders need to be better, especially Acerbi didn't look really good there. And at that point then, it really felt like that it's only a matter of time that Barcelona get the go-ahead goal, and Inter were lucky to go into the halftime break at level scores. However, there were two major things that happening. 2 injuries. Jules Koundé had to come off and Eric Garcia came on. So the Barca defense became even more frail. But also for Inter, Lautaro, who was not great in the game, but is their talisman, also was injured. He might miss the second leg. So 2 big substitutions there, which opened up the game a little bit more. Then Ronald Araujo comes in for Martin to also shore up the defense probably a teeny bit more, whereas Taremi, he's not the great striker that Lautaro is, but he kind of assists a little bit more in the attack. Also, shout out to Thuram. I mean, this guy was injured. He barely had any training sessions. He comes in and was a major factor in the game. But where it then really changed is when Di Marco came off and Carlos Augusto came on. And I heard it from many Inter fans. Carlos Augusto should play in that game because suddenly Inter were better in the game. Actually, I would argue where Barcelona was much better in the first half, in the second half, Inter was more in control and were threatening and got even another go-ahead goal, another corner. Çalhanoğlu onto Dumfries, who then, I think, off the back of Pedri or someone, heads it into the 64th minute. However, Barcelona, bam, come right back. A wonder shot by Rafinha goes onto the crossbar on the back of Sommer, and into net it counts as an own goal for Sommer. To me, it's a Rafinha goal. Will always count as a Rafinha goal. But at this point, Inter started to figure out Barca. And having Carlos Augusto there to actually keep it a little bit tighter on the back meant that Inter were taking advantage of Barca's high line more and more, and especially also when Fratesi came on. And I don't really like Fratesi all that much, but it seemed it was the right change. And then Mkhitaryan scored the 4-3 for Inter. However, his toe was offside. It was one of those, crazy stuff. Overall, the 3-3, the right result. And you could see Barca also tried to get the winner, and probably Barca will feel hard done by to not having won that one. But the threat that Inter offered, I think that the 3-3 overall was a deserved one, especially when I consider the chances and the spaces that Inter found in the second half, where if they take advantage of those, this could go very much advantage Inter into the second leg. Again, thank you to both teams for an absolute wonderful evening. This was one of the best football games I've seen in the past at least 5 years. Absolute brilliant stuff. Before I give you the chances that my model would suggest, my gut feeling says that in the Arsenal-PSG matchup, PSG should be considered the favorites, although I could see a wobble there. PSG have not been invincible. In the second one, it seems really tight because I can see that both teams can hurt each other. Although I find that there is more quality with the Barcelona team, but defensively, yeah. I would argue and I could see that Barcelona just edge it by a little bit. Having said that, PSG are humongous favorites according to my model, and yes, my model is overvaluing a 1-0 lead probably more than it should. Whereas Inter are slight favorites, probably thanks to home field advantage. The ratings of Barcelona and Inter are relatively close together, which I find fascinating, but also I use pre-season odds as well. And no one thought of Barcelona as a super team at the beginning of the season. Let's be honest about that. So those factors play in there that Inter are considered slight favorites. I think this is really very, very tight. Before we look at the overall chances, I have to say that I have the feeling that despite the brilliance of Barcelona and the wiliness of Inter, I feel that both Arsenal and PSG are slightly more complete teams that are just better as an all-around package. However, you know, everyone will probably go for Barcelona against Inter. We will have definitely a team that has never won the Champions League in the final, and they will make the second finals appearance. So that makes for an intriguing final, whereas the other two actually are royalty in Europe. So who are the favorites currently? Not surprisingly, of course, PSG sit on top because they have the huge advantage. Inter and Barcelona, as I said, my model says Inter have a slight advantage. So that's why Inter is ahead of Barcelona and Arsenal in fourth. The return legs will of course be played next Tuesday and Wednesday. I really miss the 2-week window between these because it just adds a little bit more to the storyline. This is how I grew up with. There were 2 weeks in between the two legs. But in any case, we first have Inter against Barcelona. I mean, grab your popcorn and then it will be a 1-0 win for either one of these teams. That's what I'm afraid. I actually have a feeling that we might see more goals between PSG and Arsenal, although I might be completely wrong there as well. Definitely two really intriguing matchups. As I said, I really hope that we will see nice tifos at both of these matches and also a little bit more of an organic support. Although ultras, you know, it's also very orchestrated, but it feels more organic than what the orchestrated Premier League crowds usually offer up. Okay, that was it. Wonderful 2 days. I mean, can the Europa League and the Conference League tonight top it? I highly doubt it, but we gotta see. But you could see that those are 4 teams that were each worthy of their spot in the semi-final. All of them would make worthy winners for this Champions League, and that is really exciting, I gotta say. And all brilliant teams. Is any of those probably the best team in Europe? This is really hard to say this year, because it is so level overall, and I think that's why I absolutely love these semifinals. I heard the argument that the new league format contributed that we get a non-standard semifinal, but I don't really think so about that. At least we need to see a little bit more of the league format. In any case, please let me know your thoughts on all these games in the comments below. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like these, and I will talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye! Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, here are some videos and playlists that you may enjoy too. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the little bell icon so you get notified whenever something happens in my soccer universe. And with that, have a wonderful day. Bye!